morning, everyone. Welcome back to the webinar. Very good to see you all. We live in exciting times, and we're going to be talking today about the exponential change for the coming decade. It's been a theme of mine for a while, so we're going to dig into quantum computing. We're going to dig into electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and flying taxis, and also life longevity, how our kids, and certainly our grandkids, are going to live forever, and how that's going to happen. So it's going to be an exciting stream, I think. We'll start, as always, with the markets. And I can sum up the markets in really one chart, which is this one. This is just one day in the last month or so. And this is August 26th. And Jay Powell spoke at Jackson Hole, which is the Federal Reserve's coming together, and where they give a lot of speeches. And on that day, you can see what happened to the markets. The markets went down 4%. And what Jay Powell said at that meeting was that interest rates are basically going to remain higher for longer than the market was expecting. And that's been reinforced in the last few days by other Fed officials. So you're going to have rates, which are currently 2.5%. They're saying now above 4%. In the last few days, and they're going to remain above 4% through next year. So that is a big shift for the market. It's something, to be honest, I've been anticipating for a little while, and I must say I thought the market's got that wrong. And so reality is biting for the market. We're in for a period of higher interest rates. And I was intrigued by this chart. I don't want to be too gloomy, but I do think we've got a little bit more pain to come in markets. This chart shows you in yellow the S&P 500 index through the great financial crisis, or global financial crisis, kind of 05 through 08, 09. And you can see how the market was doing very well, came back, and then recovered in that, and then retested its lows. And the white line is current. And you can see how we've had this bounce in kind of July into August, and now we're coming off again. I think we're going to retest possibly some new lows in the market in the months to come. And of course, as we've been talking about for some time, it's about inflation. And this takes you back to World War II. Inflation's running at 9.1%. They're talking in the UK of inflation running at close to 20% by early next year. I mean, that's extraordinary. Europe's at 9%, the US is at 9%. So inflation is everywhere. And that's a problem when rates are in Europe 0%. Let's remind ourselves. And they're talking about an enormous rise of 0.75 percentage point. Not high enough. Electricity's gone through the roof. This is electricity prices in the European region, gone from 100 to over 500. In Germany, electricity prices have gone up tenfold. Gas prices are up sixfold in the last few months. So a big problem for consumers, big problem for governments. Russia is turning off the main pipeline to Europe tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes for maintenance, apparently. Inflation where it matters. Look at this chart. Utility costs, what's the matter to people? Gasoline, i.e. fuel, food at home, and electricity. That's running at plus 30% year on year. That's what really matters to people, 30% up. So people are looking for higher wages. So this is the main wage track in the States. This is the big fear of the Fed. Higher inflation, wages get embedded, higher inflation gets embedded, higher interest rates for longer. And you can see inflation, wages rather, are running at a 6.5% now in the States from a steady 2 to 3%. That's a big problem when it comes to inflation and therefore interest rates. And this chart shows you that rate rise expectations are on the ascent. This is the market's anticipation for February 2023, kind of 3.5%. That's going to go up. It's going to be north of 4%, very shortly. And when you've got this amount of debt in the economy, this is where it flows through into, are we going to have a recession or not? Higher inflation, higher interest rates, a problem when you've got this debt load. This shows you household debt balance in the States, I believe, about $18 trillion. Or close to, and you get higher interest rates on that, you get a very marked fall in consumer confidence and industrial confidence. And we're seeing that right now. So this shows you OECD, which is broad-based global consumer confidence. That is at a 47-year low. Extraordinary. And then business confidence. This is in the States. Small businesses tend to be quite a good barometer of what's actually happening in the domestic economy. A record low. This goes back to the 1970s. So a record low for US small business confidence. So the market is generally saying that a recession is now likely. This is a poll of the market, global fund managers. Net percentage saying recession is likely. You can see April 2020 back to March 09, July 2022. Most participants are now saying a recession in the States is likely. Well, it might be we're actually already in a recession. We've had 2 quarters of negative GDP in America. The technical definition of a recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP. That is a recession. We've had it. So the US is in recession. And every time this has happened, it's been confirmed as a recession. It actually has, you have to wait a couple of months for the statisticians to confirm it as a recession. But it's happened. And the commentators have kind of ignored it because it's convenient not to, or convenient to ignore it. If Trump had been in power, we'd have been in a recession by now, according to CNN. With Biden in power, CNN are not saying we're in a recession yet, but we are in a recession. So just to be clear about that question, because I get asked that a lot. And the last shoe to drop, as I've been talking for a little while, will be house prices. This is new home sales in the United States. Quite a good leading indicator for prices. Fewer home sales means less demand for homes, clearly, and therefore lower prices in due course. But prices tend to be sticky because people can hold out for that price before bringing it down. And that's what means that the housing bubble, in price terms, is about to burst. This is the US National Home Price Index in the United States. You can see back to 05-06. You can see the global financial crisis back then in 06-08, when house prices came down, the housing bubble burst. You can see where house prices have gone now. I mean, that was down to 134 on the index. It's now 306. So a massive bubble in US house prices. Not much talked about, actually. Also in Canada, also in Australia, also in New Zealand, also in the UK, also in London. I was talking last time I was in London a month ago. I'm going next week. A lot of talk about how wonderful high house prices are, you know, for people's wealth. That's about to change. And partly it's about to change because of this. Affordability of housing has become very difficult. They've become unaffordable. So the blue line here is US housing affordability, okay? The amount you pay back in interest and your principal. And that has gone from the left-hand side of the chart in terms of the y-axis, it's gone from 1,000 to 2,000. So the amount you're paying back every month as a US homeowner on average has gone from $1,000 to $2,000 a month. It's doubled. That's a big problem. In red, it's as a proportion of income. So slightly less bad, but still pretty bad. Certainly higher than it was, or less affordable than it was back in 2006. So plenty of problems around for the housing market, plenty of problems around for markets, and you can see this headline. We're finally starting to see it. I could have showed you a headline for, I think, Australia and now the UK. UK house prices dropped for the first time in a year, say the Halifax Building Society. So we're starting to see that house pricing bubble deflate and potentially crash. So difficulties for markets coming up, difficulties for the housing market. The Fed's got to hike rates a lot. So we're heading into a regime I talked about last time of higher interest rates for longer, higher inflation for longer. Having had 40 years of very easy money. That's a very different environment for markets. But don't despair. Whilst I'm very cautious of market short term, we mustn't forget, as long-term investors, that in the very long term, stocks do go up, and they are the most powerful wealth generator ever invented in terms of creating wealth for people. This is the markets, etc., back to 1802. I thought this is a helpful chart. It only goes to December 2013, but it doesn't make a lot of difference. There's 200 years of dating here. So stocks, you can see it up 6.7% real, bonds 3.5% real, treasury bills kind of okay, gold actually pretty flat compared to inflation, dollar's been pretty poor. So you've got to be in stocks. So in the longer term, stick to the balanced portfolio, ride out the storm, but in the near term, I'd be surprised if we don't get some weakness. Okay, that's markets. Let's talk about the longer term and what's going to happen this decade. And I'm going to stop sharing this for a second to give you a bit more context. So we've been talking a lot about exponential change in the coming decade and how we can benefit from that as investors. We happen to be launching a fund on this, which I'm going to run, which I'm very excited about, called the Applied Intelligence Fund, which is going to invest in all these exciting exponential technology areas where you can benefit from that change. So I decided to do kind of a trilogy of webinars. This is the first of them to cover the subsets of that exponential change, be it quantum computing, be it 3D printing, whatever it is. So it's a deep dive. So we're going to do 3 today, 3 next month, 3 the following month, and year end we're going to launch this fund. So it's an area of great interest for me, and it requires some thinking. So I'm going to ask you to think a little bit, and thinking is hard, which is why most of us spend most of our time judging things as opposed to thinking about them. And what I want you to think about is the coming decade. And the most important thing to get your head around is exponential change. And I talked about this a lot. For those who haven't been present, I'm going to talk about it again. Our brains are linear, okay? We walk 30 steps away from ourselves, we get 30 meters away, 31 meter steps. That's linear. If we walk 30 exponential steps, exponential meaning you double every step, 1 meter, 2 meters, 4 meters, 8, 16, etc., 32. Almost got my math strong there. 30 exponential steps, you can see them here, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 250, etc. You end up walking 1 billion meters, taking 30 exponential steps. That's 26 times around the world. So the concept of exponential is very difficult for humans to grasp. You can try it on your kids. You can tell them, okay, I'll give you $1 every day for the next 30 days. $30. Or I can give you 1 cent, 1/100th of $1, 1 cent on day 1, and give you 2 cents on day 2, 4 cents on day 3, etc., double every day. Which would you prefer? And they all go for the linear. They all go for the $30. Well, it turns out 1 cent on day 1, doubling thereafter for 30 days, would give them $10 million. Okay, that's what this decade's going to look like. That's why I'm harping on about this. Number of doublings, 30 doublings is 1 billion. Not a million, 1 billion times. Okay, that's the power of doubling. I think I've made my point. So what we're going to talk about is how that exponential growth applies to, today, autonomous and electric vehicles, life longevity, and quantum computing. 3 amazingly fascinating areas to my mind. And then the next 2 will be around robotics, 3D printing, esports, and space technology. Really interesting. And then bottom left, what fascinates, I think, most people, blockchain and crypto, metaverse and NFTs, and Web 3.0. That's the most amazing area, that little blue blob there. So I might do that next month. But today, let's get into those 3 categories. And beginning with electric vehicles. Okay, I want to address here the extent to which electric vehicles are prevalent and to the extent to which they can still grow. Good chart here. Global annual sales of electric vehicles, EVs, okay? Global sales of EVs. This is an exponential chart. That looks like it's doubling to me. 7 million vehicles were sold in 2021. It's going to be a lot more this coming year. 7 million vehicles, or EVs. 70 million vehicles are sold globally in total, petrol and EVs. So 7 over 70, 10% of all cars sold today are electric. Quite high, actually, a little higher than I thought. Look at the split. China in blue. China's exploding on EVs. Europe is behind it in green, and behind them the States, etc. This is quite a hard chart to see, but I encourage you to lean into your screen as I'm doing. So at the bottom, this shows you the proportion of vehicle sales which are EVs. Okay, as I've said, 10% right now. So at the bottom, you can see 8.6%. That's the global average. 8.6% new sales are EVs. Fine. At the top, 86% of sales in Norway are electric. Extraordinary. Iceland, 71%. Sweden, 40%. So the Nordics are nailing this electric thing. Cast your eye down, the UK is 18%. Not bad. 1 in 5 cars electric now. I mean, that's changed a lot. All the way down, US is 4%. Pretty low. Japan, bless them, is 1%. I'm not quite sure what they're doing in Japan. 1%. Low. But Nordics are knocking the thing out of the park. How much of the embedded base is electric? Okay, not the sales, but the embedded base. Again, Norway, 23% of total cars on the road are now electric. United States, bottom right, 0.9%. The point about these charts is there's a long way to go. It's happening very quickly now. Very quickly. And it's starting to explode. And there's quite a long way to go. This shows you kind of a chart. This was about a year out of date, where we are now and where we're going to be in a year or so's time. You can see Norway at 60%. It's now, I just showed you, 84%. So it's got there much quicker than this chart expected. This chart is going to be way out of date. It's going to be way faster than that. So electric vehicles are coming through very quick. If you're in any doubt, by the way, for those consumers, the range of these things now is around 500 kilometers. So pretty good. I mean, I get 1,000 kilometers out of my petrol, but 500 kilometers is pretty good. Or if you buy a Lucid, it's 800 kilometers. So they're pretty good now. And who's selling them? Who's selling all these things? Tesla, yes. But the biggest manufacturer in the world is on this chart, kind of in the middle of it. BYD, China, Chinese manufacturer. BYD is Chinese, SAIC is Chinese, Geely is Volvo, basically, from Polestar, and then VW is 9%. So half is sold in mainland China. So BYD and SAIC are becoming dominant and exploding and starting to swamp Tesla. And this is I thought I'd show some pictures. This is a BYD. I know it looks really like a Tesla. Look at this Tesla. Okay, Chinese copy of it. This is a BYD. This is the Tesla. This is the SAIC. Looks like a Tesla, yeah? Oh well. This is the VW. VW only have one electric vehicle right now, the ID4, I think. This is it. Looks like a Tesla. But they're pretty cars. They're fine. This is the Lucid. Pretty exciting car. 800 kilometer range. This is the Rivian. Okay, this is the four-wheel drive thing. Total sales of Rivian, 6,000. Well done. BYD are producing like 1 million. And if you can buy a Rivian or you can buy a new Ford F-150 Lightning, which is all electric, which one are you going to go for? You're going to go for the Ford. It's much better. So some of these new companies are going to be crushed. And if you look at what BMW are doing in this area, look at this BMW electric range. Pretty cool. I mean, they're covering all the bases. If you take the bottom right, this i7, 7 Series BMW, just come out, electric 7 Series, luxury car. Look at it inside. These electric vehicles, they're making them very high tech. This is the rear seat of the BMW 7 Series electric. It's got a full kind of 5G screen. Beautiful place to be. So electric cars are coming at you, not in South Africa, unfortunately, but globally, very fast. And before we get into autonomous, the point here is electric vehicles are exploding. That's a good thing. Secondly, the kind of new incumbents, Tesla, are going to get swamped by people like BMW and the Chinese. So the existing manufacturers are going to do very well out of this. But electric vehicles are a great place to be as an investing destination. Autonomous vehicles. Okay, these which drive themselves. This also is happening very quickly. I've talked about this before. I'll be fairly brief on this before I get into flying taxis. Okay, this is the first one in Phoenix, Arizona, October 2020. This is Waymo, which is the Google autonomous vehicle. These have been driving around. This very happy lady's hopped out. There's no driver in these at all. There's no safety driver. So they wander around Phoenix quite happily. They've been doing so for, what is that, almost 2 years now. Autonomous vehicles coming our way. Also in San Francisco now, January this year. Cruise, which is a GM company, again, fully autonomous, no safety driver. Autonomous taxis. And then in China, just approved last week, I think, or last month, to drive around 2 Chinese cities. Beidou, which is actually a search engine company, supplying autonomous taxis. And by the way, this is happening quick because half the cost of your Uber is the driver. This is why Uber's pushing so hard in this as well, because this is the future. Your taxi ride is going to be half what it was before. And by the way, in Arizona, autonomous trucks, these enormous trucks, no driver, they've been cruising around for the last year without any safety drivers. And the last thing, electric vehicles, the UK, US, and Europe have said all new car sales have to be electric by 2035. Anyway, petrol's done. Right, finally flying taxis in this segment. All right, again, this is happening. They're prototyping these in Dubai, particularly. Embraer, in a joint venture in Dubai, should be flying in 2026. It's flying test flights now from the Atlantis and the Palm. This is the vehicle you hop into. So again, flying taxis, autonomous, they're probably autonomous actually, are happening because of this exponential growth in technology and the convergence of those exponentially accelerating technologies, materials technology, AI to drive the thing, etc. 2026, 2025. You should watch the video of this. This is Bellwether, which is a UK company. They're looking to launch this in 2025. Very pretty flying car, no rotors. We'll see how that goes. That looks amazing to me. They're starting the prototypes now. And then finally, these happy jobbies, Jobby Aviation, are going to launch in the US in 2024. The US wants to be first into this. That's the flying taxi behind them. Oh, it has a range of 200 kilometers and flies at a slightly terrifying 320 kilometers per hour. I'm sure I'd want to do that. But there you go, 2024. This area is exploding. So I wanted to update you on all of that. Very exciting area for investment. Oh, and the first carport, sorry, this is a UK thing. Coventry in the UK. This is the first urban airport, air-dash-port, where these things can hover and land and take off to the next one between cities. Very cool. All right, change gears into quantum computing. Quantum computing is a complicated area, and I have to do quite a lot of research on this. I'm going to describe what quantum computing is. This is a quantum computer. This is the IBM Quantum Computer System 1 of 2019. This is what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to describe what quantum computing is. Well, first of all, it's much faster. That's the headline. Classical computers use bits, ones and zeros. Okay, 1 0 1 0. That's what digital means. 1 0 1 0 in a linear fashion to do computations. We all know that. Those are the bits, zeros and ones. Quantum bits or qubits are the quantum version of that, of the 0 and 1. And the clever bit, extraordinarily clever, is that the 0 and the 1 can coexist at the same time. You can be in 2 states at the same time. And therefore you can do extraordinarily fast calculations. And read what that means. Qubits make use of superposition. This is a quantum mechanical phenomenon where some properties of subatomic particles are not defined until actually measured. Okay, so subatomic particles at a certain temperature, this has to be close to absolute zero, okay, which is minus 273 degrees centigrade, minus 273 degrees centigrade, pretty cold. At that level, quantum mechanics comes into play and particles behave very strangely, and they can live in 2 states at the same time. It's like flipping a coin and observing it while it's in the air. You don't know if it's heads or tails yet. And you do the calculations while it's in the air. Okay, that's the principle. Ones and noughts at the same time, as opposed to when it's landed and you observe it at the same time. It's kind of existing heads and tails at the same time. That's the core principle of quantum computing. That's one coin, okay? One qubit flipping around, let's say, noughts and ones. If you put another one with it, flipping at the same time in the air, you get an exponential increase in computing power. This is really fascinating because instead of heads or tails or heads or tails, it can be heads or tails, 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 heads, heads. So there are 4 possible states while it's spinning. Okay, head, head, tail, tail, head, tail, tail, head. That's 4. you got 2 spinning. If you put 3 spinning, it's going to be 8. So you get an exponentially increasing computing power the more qubits you put into the air and spin. Fascinating. That's the entanglement of qubits. So you get exponential growth as you add qubits to the computer. This is a delicate process because you've got to measure it while it's in the air. So it's a very delicate entanglement process. So it's very error prone right now, but often it works. And when it works, it's extraordinarily fast. I'm going to define what fast is. In 2019, this is important because this is going to change our lives. In 2019, this IBM computer performed in a few minutes a calculation which a normal computer would have taken 10,000 years to do. Okay, a few minutes versus 10,000 years. 2020, China performed in 200 seconds a computation which would have taken 2.5 billion years for a normal computer to do. That is 100 trillion times faster, this thing. In 2020 as well, I talked about this before, China performed the first quantum encrypted video call. Okay, I'll come back onto that and why that's important. And then, this is the killer, in May this year, 2022, May this year, China shocked the world. I didn't actually know this. The US is still way behind on this. China shocked the world by performing a calculation, and it would have taken 30 trillion years for a normal computer to do it, 30 trillion years, and the quantum computer they designed took 1 millisecond. That's what they call a quantum leap. So how is quantum computing going to change our lives? Well, it's going to do things much faster. And that will mean enormous progress in gene editing. I'm about to talk about it. Protein folding, tailored gene editing, because these are massive computations which you can do very quickly now. Cybersecurity, code breaking. So this is going to affect potentially, as some of you I'm sure know, the cryptocurrency market, which relies on encryption. So encryption is a code, and classical computers can't break the code. These possibly can. So in terms of the whole area of national security, the race to quantum computing is very important. So China is winning it right now, and if it wins it, then it will be able to talk in an encrypted way and break our encrypted codes, and our missile codes, and our satellite codes, etc. So national security is a big deal. And quantum computing is going to make things like logistics much faster, manufacturing process much faster. It's going to make a profound impact on all our lives. And it's going to do so because you can get on the cloud now. Through Amazon Web Services or Azure, the Microsoft, right, you can rent space, quantum computing space, and do the calculations much faster. Airbus are doing it in terms of wing design. Groceries are doing it in terms of logistics. So quantum is happening, and again, is exploding and will change a lot, which is what this slide says. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to say on quantum computing. I'm going to talk about why we're going to live forever. I'll skip that IBM roadmap. Okay, again, I find this a fairly interesting area. Ray Kurzweil of Singularity University, and now the head of engineering at Google, a bit of a hero of mine, defined the escape, longevity escape velocity. Okay, let's just define what that is. I'll give you a break from slides. 1 second. Longevity escape velocity. That is that the average life expectancy increases by more than a year within the year you're now living. Okay, so by living an extra year, your average life expectancy is increased by more than a year. Ergo, you could live forever. That's pretty cool. He expects that to happen soon after 2030. What's that, 8 years' time. Already, as you can see in this chart, of course, life expectancy has gone up a lot. From 30 years of age, what is that, a century ago, to currently in Japan, 87. That's the highest in the world. So this is happening already because of drug discoveries and because of medicine and penicillin and all these good things. And of course, that's going to keep on going up because of partly drug discoveries, because of quantum computing, and partly because of this, CRISPR. Okay, this is gene editing. Okay, and I'll tell you what CRISPR means. Clustered, regularly interspaced, short, palindromic repeats. That's what CRISPR stands for. CRISPR-Cas9 system. That is gene editing technology. What it does, and you should watch a video of this, it puts a protein in, this is your DNA, by the way, your building blocks of life. It puts a protein in with this CRISPR technology, and it finds the appropriate bit of DNA. Let's say it's a cancerous cell in there. It finds it, latches onto it, cuts out the DNA, the cancerous DNA, cuts it out, and replaces it with a healthy DNA strand. A bot goes into your system, they can do this now, into your system, latches onto your DNA, and repairs it. A gene editing. Watch videos of this. It's the most extraordinary thing which is happening right now. And that means endless possibilities, because we are a function of our DNA. It dictates everything we are. From our height, to our hair color, to our skin color, to our eye color, to our prevalence for disease. Am I going to get cancer in 5 years' time? My DNA would tell me. It would tell me right now. And if it can tell me right now, we can fix it. Take that all the way back to embryo, you can fix it at birth. Clean as a whistle, live forever. This is extraordinary stuff. Has its ethical issues, I will say that. And the ethical issues are around, you know, how you function in this, because you can do extraordinary things like this. Okay, these are fluorescent green mice. Okay, this is actually perfectly ethical, it turns out. You can turn mice green. I feel sorry for all these mice, by the way, but there you go. What they did, they used CRISPR technology to take a jellyfish gene, jellyfish are fluorescent green, a jellyfish gene, put it into a mouse, and edit the genes within the mouse and replace it with jellyfish genes. There we go, the mice lit up. Again, watch the video on YouTube, it is an extraordinary thing. That was to kind of prove the technology worked. Also in mice, they have successfully, at the cellular level, reversed the aging process. So the mice, they're kind of a normal mouse and an age-reversed mouse, and the age-reversed mouse got younger compared to the other mouse. So they'll be able to make us get younger. Probably not within my lifetime, sadly, but you never know. In Tel Aviv, Israel, in 2021, on mice, they got to 100% success rate in altering the gender of the mouse at birth. Maybe before birth, I can't remember. Probably at the embryo stage. At the embryo stage, let's say that. You could alter the gender. So you're born, do you want a boy or a girl? Your choice. And then, this chap, Professor Hei Yankui, JK, looks like a very pleasant chap. However, kind of under wraps in China, he went into gene editing at the embryo level and actually edited a gene of a human, actually two humans because they were twins, to make the gene CCR5, that was the gene in question, resistant to HIV. So you wanted to make HIV resistant twins. Completely illegal. Like, you just don't do that yet. Lots of ethical regulatory boundaries to be crossed before you get there, but he did it, and the twins were born. Lulu and Nana, born, and they are around today, and they're perfectly fine, turns out. But that was across the boundaries. JK is now in prison. He's serving a 3-year prison term and a $400,000 fine. Was a professor at a university in China. So I guess it shows you could do it, but you can't do it yet. But this is going to come fairly quickly, and the regulatory authorities are looking at this now in terms of how we regulate gene editing. I watched a YouTube video which was entitled, "Could you edit your DNA to look hotter?" More attractive, hotter. So this was a 5-minute video talking about how gene editing could be used with teenagers or youngsters to change your hair color, change your eye color, change your skin color, change your complexion, change the features you have. As opposed to plastic surgery, you go gene editing. So it's becoming teenaged. It's becoming a thing. So gene editing is happening And again, it's going to happen much quicker than we think. And the source of gene editing will mean that our children probably, and without question, in my view, their grandchildren, our grandchildren, will live, they have the ability to live forever. All right. By the way, for those of you, as a close, for those of you who are thinking about it, because I was, the COVID-19 vaccine, I don't get too much into this, the COVID-19 vaccine, I'll stop sharing this, is an mRNA vaccine, which is a messenger RNA. So that isn't gene editing. I thought it might be. It's gene messaging. Okay. So the thing goes in and does talk to your DNA and persuades it to produce natural antibodies against the virus. So it's a gene messaging system, not a gene editing system. It can deliver all kinds of things. So mRNA is a very interesting and very long-standing, actually, technology, but sits alongside gene editing in case anyone is wondering. All right, I've got through it all in good time. Okay, I've got a couple of questions. Yeah, charging points. This is sometimes a very South African question because we're very slow in South Africa, to say the least, to put in charging points. And the prevalence of charging points is exploding overseas, particularly Nordics. So you go to southern France or whatever, or California, charging points everywhere. So a lot of investments can be put into that to catch up with the growth of electric vehicles. You know, that is going to happen. So thanks for raising that, because I was going to address that earlier in the talk. I hope that was helpful. So headlines, markets, mind your eye near term. I think we're in for the rocky ride, and the world is changing. Higher inflation, higher interest rates is less comfortable for everyone. Outside of that, exponential change, amazing things happening, and all these things we're going to invest in are going to be extraordinary growth stories. They're going to change all our lives for the next 10 years and more. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.